This is the Radically Realistic Podcast. I'm Susanna LaPointe, a certified personal trainer, nutritionist, and wellness coach. I've been in this business for 14 years now, and after working with hundreds of clients, what I've found is that sustainable self-care doesn't come naturally to us humans. It's taken me a while to figure it out for myself too, but now that I've found what works and what doesn't, I want to share my insights with you, along with a dose of positivity and encouragement and maybe a little tough love, because who couldn't use more of that? Let's do this. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today again. Real quick before we get started, I just want to tell you I was planning to have a new microphone by now. I actually just went to the post office and picked up what I thought was my new microphone that I had ordered, and it was an insect trap. They had sent me the wrong item. So I just called and I'm having a new one sent. So hopefully by the next episode, I'll have a new microphone. This one's not great, as you can tell. But I just spent a whole bunch of time preparing this episode, and I really wanted to get it out because I'm extremely passionate about this topic. So let's get into this one. If you would kindly leave a review and a rating, if you haven't already, thank you so much to the people who have. I super appreciate it. Just so I can get this little podcast off the ground a little bit. I would really appreciate it if you could do that. And also if you could share this episode with any of your family or friends who you feel may benefit from this information, that would be awesome. I totally appreciate it. Thank you so much. And let's get started. Okay, so today I'm talking about one of the absolute non-negotiable foundations of self-care, and that is blood sugar awareness and management. Now, this is not something that is talked about a lot, and I can't figure out why. How your body handles your metabolism is one of the defining factors of how well you will age and how you will feel as you age. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of information given preemptively as far as how to manage your blood sugar responses on a day-to-day basis in order to set yourself up for the best possible scenario as we get older. In fact, most people don't know anything about type 2 diabetes, which is the result of unmanaged blood sugar over the years until they actually get diagnosed with it. Which means as their blood sugar starts creeping up over time, most doctors don't mention this as a problem until it actually is a problem. And the funny thing is, it's entirely preventable. Unfortunately, what they do to, quote, manage it after diagnosis is to prescribe a medication. And we all know how prescription medications drive a lot of what we are getting told in the healthcare industry. I don't even like to call it that. It's not healthcare. Anyways, this means we have to be our own advocate, and we need to educate ourselves on how to keep ourselves out of this blood sugar drama as we get older. I'm sure you know someone with type 2 diabetes. Most people do. Some people may not perceive it to be a very big deal. This is kind of a problem. They just medicate more and more as the years go by, but I'm telling you, the outcomes of poor blood sugar management over time is not something I would wish upon anyone. Some of these outcomes are limb amputation, kidney failure, some cancers, and heart attacks. So let's back up. What is blood sugar? Blood sugar, or blood glucose, they're the same thing, is the main sugar found in your blood. It comes from the foods that we eat. It's our body's main source of energy. Our blood carries glucose to all of our body's cells for use for energy. Over time, having too much glucose in our blood can cause serious problems like diabetes. Diabetes is a disease in which your blood sugar levels are too high for too long, and your body kind of runs out of the ability to keep the levels regular, and they slowly start to creep up. With every meal we eat, sugar is released into our blood, and then our pancreas releases insulin, which acts as a key to unlock the cells to allow the sugar from our blood into the cells to provide energy for our body. When we have too much sugar in our blood for an extended period of time, the insulin stops working the way it's supposed to. It starts to require more and more insulin to do the same job that much less insulin used to do. It's kind of a misconception that the blood sugar is the problem, but it's actually a symptom of the problem. The actual problem is that there's too much insulin running through our body. The more insulin your body has to process, the more fat it stores, the more muscle it burns or wastes, meaning the muscle goes away, and certain systems start to break down. This is why, because of the fat storing and the muscle burning, this is why people who develop type 2 diabetes are generally overweight and most likely have been for quite a while. It's a process of your body using more and more and more insulin to do the same job, but the mechanism starts to wear out over time and your blood sugar levels start to creep up. I wanted to provide you with some numbers here just as a reference. So when we go to the doctor, we get our blood work done annually, hopefully, a complete blood count. There's generally a fasting blood glucose reading in there. The normal range is between 70 and 100, but 100 is a little high. The optimal range is between 70 and 90. Optimal meaning you're really healthy. Those lab numbers, the ranges they give you there are for, they're based off of how sick our country is. And so their quote normal numbers do not mean optimal. They mean it's not an emergency yet. Okay. So pre-diabetic, you're generally considered pre-diabetic if your fasting glucose numbers are 115 and above. And then full-blown type 2 diabetic is at 126. So once your blood sugar numbers, your fasting blood sugar numbers hit 126, they're like, oh, you have type 2 diabetes. Here's a prescription. Here's the big problem though. Doctors most likely won't tell you that there is a problem with your blood sugar when the numbers start creeping up until it already is a problem. Generally, no one is aware that they are having elevated blood sugars until they are in type 2, they're diagnosed with full-blown type 2 diabetes. And then they medicate. The medication doesn't actually address the actual problem, which is there's too much insulin running around in your body. You take a pill, usually metformin or something like that, and it magically lowers your blood sugar. But your body is still producing the same amount of insulin. So over time, all this insulin running rampant through your body causes a lot of complications. Some people, when diagnosed, handle this very responsibly, and when they find out they have type 2 diabetes, they make the necessary lifestyle adjustments. They start eating healthier, they start exercising, they lose weight, and sometimes they can totally reverse this disease. But the majority of people diagnosed with this disease do not take responsibility for it. They medicate until things become even more out of control and they start taking insulin through injections. So over time, you have to medicate more and more and more. And then when it continues to not work after years, most likely, then you actually have to start taking insulin by injection. And then over time, the amount of insulin you have to take goes up. So you just continue taking more and more to try to regulate this system in your body. And then you just have so much insulin in your body that things just start to shut down. This is when you can lose a toe or a foot to amputation. This is when heart attacks occur. This is when kidneys fail. And the tragic part about this is that it is completely preventable. And that is what I'm here to educate you about today. Okay. I generally draw a diagram for my clients to illustrate this point, but I'm going to try explaining it to you since I'm just in your ears right now. So imagine a graph with two lines going horizontally across the paper. I usually use a whiteboard, whatever. The bottom line says 80 and has a line going straight out from it, and the top line says 120 and has a straight line going out from it. So our bodies prefer to keep our blood sugar between 80 and 120 at all times. So our pancreas regulates this by producing insulin, and we also produce glucagon, which is another hormone. Insulin's a hormone. Glucagon's a hormone that brings your blood sugar back up if it's too low. So insulin brings your blood sugar down and glucagon will bring it back up. When we eat anything, our blood sugar levels rise either a little bit or a lot, depending on what the content of the food is, which we'll get to in just a minute. And our pancreas releases insulin to bring the blood sugar back down to a normal level, which is generally between 80 and 90. Depending on the type of food you are eating, your blood sugar will come up a bit So imagine a line starting at the 80, rising steadily up to about 100, stabilizing, and then slowly working its way back down to around 80 over several hours. Or it will spike up. So imagine a line rising sharply from that 80 up past the 120, up to 150 or beyond, and then sharply coming straight back down to below the 80. So that's when your body shoots your blood sugar up. Your body releases a large amount of insulin because there is so much sugar in your blood, and it tanks your blood sugar. So it drops really fast and it goes low. And that is that hangry feeling we get after eating something that has a lot of simple carbohydrates in it. It's kind of that frantic, like I need to find food now, or I'm going to bite someone's head off, or you're shaky, or you're sweaty. Low blood sugar has lots of different symptoms, like a fuzzy brain, lots of different things. But generally, hangry describes it well, where you are just like you must have food now or you're going to lose your shit. I wanted to give you two different examples of how this could look. So if you start your day with either a bowl of cereal or a bagel or a donut or pancakes, your blood sugar levels will go up quickly and then drop really quickly. This is why generally after eating something full of carbohydrates with little to no protein, we feel hungry shortly after. This is low blood sugar, and this is when hangry happens. Generally, the results of hangry are frantically looking for more sugar, even if it's not necessarily in the form of sugar. It could be crackers or bread or a granola bar or a sugary coffee or a cookie or a donut. At this point, you can't actually make a logical decision and eat a salad with protein and vegetables or leftover soup from last night. Your body is screaming for quick energy, and that's always in the form of fast digesting carbohydrates and sugar. You can see how, if repeated meal after meal, day after day, week after week, month after month, and year after year, this could cause a lot of problems. And a lot of people are living in this place of extreme blood sugar mismanagement. Honestly, keeping your blood sugar stable is actually pretty simple once you understand how it works. What I want to share with you today is the most basic and simple way to ensure your blood sugar stays stable all day long. And that is the simple magic of eating a protein-rich, macronutrient-balanced, substantial breakfast. When I refer to macronutrient, the three macronutrients are protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Those are the substances that almost all of our food is made up of. Those three things. Different combinations of those three things. Okay. If you were to start your day with 2 to 3 eggs, a half an avocado, and maybe a piece of toast, your blood sugar would come up a bit, stabilize, and then probably chill in a really good place for several hours. This is a place where you can focus, you can get your work done, or whatever else you are doing. You can have good and stable energy and a good and stable mood until it's time to eat the next meal, which won't be an emergency because your blood sugar isn't low. This way, you can make a logical decision on what you are going to eat next, and you can choose to continue to keep your blood sugar stable until your evening meal, which again, you won't have low blood sugar, and you'll be able to continue to make good choices. If you repeat this pattern day after day, week after week, year after year, your blood sugar should be in a pretty good place most of the time. Of course, actually, due to our high processed food consumption in this country and just the fact that we like to eat out and we like to have drinks and we like to have dessert, most of us do end up with elevated blood sugars as we get older, but nothing as dire as the previous example. And these are all manageable, and things can be reversed with nutritional therapies and stuff. So there's things that can be done if you start to develop prediabetes later on in life, or if your blood sugar starts to creep up a bit, there's things that can be done. But on the whole, if we are pretty cognizant about blood sugar management ourselves on our end of things, instead of depending on the medical system to take care of this stuff, then we should be pretty good for most of us. Okay, the main takeaway from this episode is that I want you to rethink your meals if you are not in a place where your blood sugar feels stable all day long. You should not be getting tired after you eat. You should be able to go about 3 to 5 hours after eating without needing to eat again. You shouldn't need to be snacking all day long. Having 3 or 4 substantial meals a day that hold you over for 3 to 5 hours each, that are a good combination of proteins, carbohydrates, and healthy fats, will help you feel satiated and will keep your mood and energy stable all day long. This is the goal. The goal is to be able to get through the day without constantly thinking about food and needing to eat. There are so many other things in life that we can and could and should be worrying about that is not food constantly. Having stable blood sugar will do this for you. You will eat your meal, you'll feel satisfied for several hours, and when you need to have your next meal, like I said, it won't be an emergency, and you'll be able to make a logical choice of foods that are not extremely stimulating, and you can have a sensible protein and veggie meal and keep going with the rest of your day and feel good all day long. When you are ruled by wildly fluctuating blood sugars, you can't make good food choices very well because your body's always in a state of an emergency. In my practice, I promote a diet that is protein-centric, meaning that each time you eat, you have a substantial serving of protein. I generally recommend 20 to 30 grams per meal. I also promote a high-fiber diet. Protein and fiber together drastically reduce the amount of rise of the sugar in your blood. So those two together are a pretty magical combination for blood sugar stabilization. So fiber is a complex carbohydrate, usually made from complex carbohydrates, generally vegetables, whole grains, not flour, whole grains, beans, legumes, sweet potatoes. These all have lots of fiber in them. Definitely lots of leafy greens. Those are like the best source of fiber. So a heavy protein and vegetable centric diet is what I promote eating most of the time. Of course, there's room for other things in there too, but most of the time, keeping your blood sugar stable with those two things will make a really big difference in your health in the long term. And when I refer to protein, I mean meat, fish, eggs, also vegan sources of protein, which are lentils, beans, tempeh, tofu, nuts, and seeds. The awesome thing about vegetarian or vegan sources of protein is they often have a lot of fiber in them as well. So these things won't spike your blood sugar. The biggest culprits of blood sugar spiking are sugar, obviously, and flour. Flour is a big one. Flour's molecules are smaller than sugars, which means they actually get absorbed into your bloodstream faster than sugar does and raise your blood sugar higher and faster than sugar does. So white flour, even though it is so delicious, should definitely be a very sometimes food. Hydrogenated oil, so something like a donut that is sugar and flour fried in fat, are really going to mess with your blood sugar. And unfortunately, pizza is kind of a blood sugar nightmare because it has flour and a lot of fat. So the combination of simple carbohydrates and large amounts of fat are also really bad on the blood sugar response. It causes your blood sugar to spike pretty bad. These things, in moderation, are totally fine, but consistently making sure your diet is overall very balanced will make an overall positive impact on your health. We don't have the luxury to mess around with this a whole lot. The diabetes epidemic is growing, and like I said, it's not talked about a whole lot, and we aren't educated on it, and I actually have no idea why, except for the pharmaceutical industry is probably why, because they make a lot of money off of type 2 diabetes, and that is a complete other story, and we won't talk about that right now. But it's definitely a risk for most Americans. I really want to encourage you to understand how the foods that you eat affect your body and your metabolism and your energy so that you can feel as good as possible. You can live as long as possible while feeling good while you're alive. Like, living a long time is no good if you feel like shit. So we want to feel really good while we are alive. Quickly, while I'm here, I'm just going to take a minute to identify the distinctions between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, because while they have the same name, they are not the same disease. So type 1 diabetes, that's what my son has. He was diagnosed at age 9. It is an autoimmune condition, which means that his body's lovely immune system attacked the beta cells in his pancreas, which produce insulin. So nothing could have prevented it, and there's no cure. He has to inject himself with insulin many times a day. Every time he eats something, and then also if his blood sugar is too high, which it often is, he has to do a correction dose where he injects more insulin to bring his blood sugar back down. These are all things our bodies do for us, but he has to manage it all externally. His body doesn't produce any insulin at all. Okay, so type 2 diabetes is when your body's insulin processing mechanism basically wears out and the insulin doesn't do what it used to. So they both, uncontrolled, result in the same tragic outcomes. High blood sugar, if you have type 1 diabetes, if you're not managing it well, your blood sugar ends up just the high blood sugar over time. And then type 2 diabetes, also if you're not managing it well, all that high blood sugar over time, plus all that excess insulin, results in the same thing, which is just confusing that they're called the same thing, but they're not. The mechanism of the disease is different. So just thought I would clarify that for you really quick, since most people don't know the difference. That is going to do it for me today. I hope this was somewhat informative and that it made sense of something that most people don't quite understand. I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions. The best way to get in contact with me is probably on Instagram. You can send me a DM. You can find me on Instagram at Susanna LaPointe Coaching. You can send me an email. You can go to my website. I would love to answer any questions that you have about this or any other aspect of health and self-care. I'm always interested in chatting about this stuff. So thank you so much for listening today, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.